I think having a human connection is one of the most important things about what we do as human beings. Whether that's in your work or in your personal life, it does not matter. There's a certain amount of kind of fashionability about being maybe antisocial or just kind of avoiding contact with other people. And there's people who are, truly introverts and who have a really hard time kind of making connections with other people, or it just becomes really draining to connect with other people in a social environment. But I think there's a huge advantage to anyone's work to make a human connection with the people who are affected by or who benefit from the work that we're doing. I think the earliest time that I made this connection was when I was in my undergraduate degree. I started studying music, and I was really interested in this field of ethnomusicology, which is essentially just the study of music of indigenous people or of certain cultural contexts. And so when I was researching about this field and I was trying to learn about what sort of practices were common, and one of the things they came up with was it was incredibly important for academics to embed themselves in the cultures that they were studying, to really become part of that culture, to become a contributor or a participant, to really be integrated into that work. And that this gave them a whole new perspective, a new understanding, and could kind of see the culture from an internal view and not as kind of an external outsider. And so that's really, really important, especially in academia, for us to think about, because we don't want to look at people whom we're studying as objects of research. We want to look at them as co-participants, as people who are integrated into the research that we're doing, so that they have direct channel for informing us as researchers who have the tools to conduct scientific research. They can inform us about what their main priorities, what their values, what matters to them. And then what ends up happening is you get this great effect of connecting with a community and then having better quality research at the end of the day, having research that is is improved, that is more robust, and that actually holds up to scrutiny in a bigger and better way, because you're not viewing people as objects, you're viewing people as collaborators. And all this comes down to is being able to build and maintain relationships, being able to connect with another human being, foster that connection, and maintain that connection over a period of time. Another really early opportunity I had to start connecting with people who are kind of beneficiaries and collaborators in my research was in the first big, large-scale research project that I got to participate in. It was a project that was funded by the European Union, and I had the real good fortune to be able to connect with a group, different groups of people with disabilities who were in some ways beneficiaries, but in other ways conspirators, you could say, co-collaborators in the research project. And one of the earliest memories from that period of time was in middle of winter in Oslo. So you can imagine the streets were covered in snow, ice, 10, 15 centimeters deep on the sidewalks. And we had a visiting researcher from Central Asia who was blind. And so he used a white cane in order to guide around the streets. And I was tasked with helping him, to accompanying him to go out to dinner with a group of the other researchers. And I remember for the first time, I was asked to guide someone who was blind. And I didn't know what to do. I was just kind of out of my depth. I had never interacted closely with someone who was blind before. And so I just asked 1,000 questions. I just was very inquisitive. How would you like me to do this? What works for you? What makes sense here? And I remember just walking down the sidewalk with him and, of course, being very tentative at first because I wasn't sure exactly what I was doing and I wasn't sure how to do it. But he was so kind and so generous and was able to kind of give me some input and advice. And, you can do it this way or that way or this way, and it'll work fine for him. And so it was the first time that I really made a strong connection with someone who I would not normally have had a connection with, but whom was a primary kind of beneficiary of my research and collaborator in the research that I was working on. It was around the same period of time that one of another colleague who, leader in the field, she told me that she was coming to Oslo, and she is also blind, and she was going to come here to go skiing. And my mind just kind of melted. I was like, how is this possible? And so I asked her 1,000 questions, and I said, how does this work? Can you just explain it to me? What's the kind of mechanics? What's the practicalities of it? And she was kind and generous enough to kind of walk me through it. But again, it kind of opened my mind. It opened new ways of thinking, new ways of kind of understanding someone else, and new ways of connecting with someone, connecting with a group of people who has a very different experience of life than I did. And in the last experience from this particular part of my life was when I was out in Seattle, Washington, and I was going to a group that was working with blind and partially sighted people to get them into employment. And I went to a workshop that they kind of run or co-run that was entirely staffed by people who are blind or partially sighted. And they were in this workshop, and they were handling heavy duty equipment, like equipment that you would really need a lot of safety considerations to operate. And I had operated some of these kinds of equipment when I was in high school, because this was the kind of high school that I went to. It was very hands-on. And so when I saw this equipment and I saw this group of people using this equipment with no problems whatsoever, just like it was an everyday kind of piece of work for them, which it was, it really opened my eyes, and it kind of made my heart feel very, very happy, because it was again an opportunity for me to expand my mindset, for me to understand a different perspective than my own, and really to kind of connect with a group of people who again have a very different experience than me. And I think that connection, the connection with groups of people who are working in the same area as you, who are beneficiaries of your work, or who are kind of stakeholders, is of critical importance no matter what work you do. I don't care if you're in politics, especially if you're in politics. I don't care if you're in banking and finance. I don't care if you're in academia or aerospace or research or anything else in the world. Any profession can benefit by having a close connection with the groups of people who are affected by, who are beneficiaries of, or who are just connected to the work that you're doing. So if you're planning a new project, if you're thinking in your head, hey, you know what I would love to do is this, this, and this, maybe you're seeking financing for that project, maybe you're coming out with a new business. The best advice I can give you is to connect with the groups of people that may be affected by your business. And if you're going to sit there and say, oh, well, my business is for everyone, that's our target market, I would have to push back and say, no, that's definitely not the way you should be focusing your business. You really need to focus in on a specific group of people. And once you've identified that specific group of people, go make that connection.